How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Back on board for episode 2 of our video series, our vlog for crypto gaming and the evolution of the video game industry. So today, nothing too crazy. It's officially going to be 2023 in the next few hours. People are celebrating all around the world. I know all of you over there in Australia are having fun and partying. Stay safe, do what you do. But I figured it'd be a great time right now to let's talk about 2023, what we expect that the future will hold. What are some of the items that we're looking to? What are some predictions? Just some of the basic ideas, getting ready for the new year and hoping that it's going to be a good one. So first off, things to start with. I guess we have to stop at the very top of the entire industry. Okay. The entire world is going through a economic downturn right now for a bunch of various reasons. For those of you that are paying attention, interest rates have been increasing all over the world, and because of that, we've been having to bear the brunt of liquidity leaving the system. So what does that mean? We're in a bear market. My expectations throughout 2023 is that I would say towards the end of 2023 is when we might start seeing a turnaround. It might be a little sooner than that. It might be 2 months away from now at the earliest. But I really don't think we're going to have a turnaround 2023, maybe towards the end, and focus on a big bull market, maybe 2024 and going forward. So what does that mean? What is my perspective then in terms of how I'm going to be spending 2023? A real big focus, I think, going to be on focusing on the games that I expect to survive the downturn. Okay, we had quite a few great games that launched over the past few years and a big funding circle that happened in Web3 gaming. Because of that, there's going to be a handful of these projects that are going to make it. They're going to survive. They're going to continue to move forward. I'm going to be focusing on a select handful. Okay, so we got to break down games into really two different categories. Playable and investable, I guess we could say. Playable being obviously the games from 2018, the ones 2018, 19, 20 that are already gone through one full cycle and built communities. And for a lot of these games like Lost Relics, games like Gods Unchained, games like Axie, they already have a core, and for a majority of those ecosystems, I would venture to say that we've had a lot of cycling amongst players. Estimated right now in Web3 gaming, we have somewhere between maybe 1 million to 3 million gamers. I would say that on an average month, we're clocking a little bit below that. But don't forget that there are plenty of bots in the system, and there will continue to be. I expect there to be quite a few games that survive simply on the fact that they are... A majority of bots are operating inside the system and players are operating around them or through them. So just because there's botting in games, I don't think that's going to be a negative. There are pros, there are cons. Players obviously want to be playing alongside human beings, but you're going to be hearing a lot about AI this year, guys and gals. You're going to be hearing about what that could mean for the gaming industry. We're going to have a lot of conversations, I'm sure, about what video games, crypto, and AI all have in common, and what can they do to be able to grow forward. And we're going to see some things that we really didn't expect, especially with AI. We're going to get hit really by surprise. So going back to the idea about playable and investable, on the playable side, these are the games that since we've had a large turnover and the bull market has come and gone, a lot of major asset prices for some of these economies have dipped. And if you're paying attention, a lot of players, when they exit. They don't keep track of it, and that's not me. So if you've been paying attention, some of the higher quality items in a lot of these different games are starting to move into new players' hands. Players that are getting them at relatively cheap prices that will likely be the leaders going into the next bull run. So if they're going to be holding on to these items, that's really actually the question we need to address. I think as gamers, gaming culture, to quote my brother, it's a very disposable medium. Okay, we turn through games, we buy games on Steam and holiday sales, and we don't actually play them, right? They just sit in our library, and we are quote unquote the owners, but we actually never go through them, you know. And even with physical media, we used to buy the cartridges, the CDs of the games that we used to love. Now they're gone. Now we're going into a streaming online world. That's going to be the future, this idea of the metaverse, but it's going to slowly be built out. You know, I expect that the amount of hours that people spend in digital worlds to only increase year on year, even if asset prices, crypto prices continue to go down. I would expect that the amount of time people are spending to increase. Gaming is recession proof, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of the items are going to hold their value. As a matter of fact, we're going to be seeing them finding their floors, which is the most interesting thing for me, right? So right now for 2023, I really want to be focused on getting a clear understanding. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There's a handful of games that I have a really deep understanding for in terms of crypto gaming, and being able to understand the meta, being able to understand players' choices is really the key. So that's on the playable side. You know, on the investing side, now these are the games that have either raised a lot of funds or are in the process of raising funds, but they're not going to be having a playable demo or beta anytime soon, 1 year, 2 years out. But there's a lot of speculation for different reasons, right? You can evaluate crypto gaming companies or gaming projects in a lot of different ways, right? There's the actual entity, the developers, there are the players and community, there's the technology that they use. That includes the crypto layer 1s or layer 2s. You know, there's different philosophies that each one of them are taking. And we're just going to have to keep an eye on how they play out and how they evolve. But in the investable section, these are the things that you're going to be buying right now. You're going to be holding on to for, 1, 2, 3 years. Okay, now, the biggest advantage I would say for most Web3 gamers at this point is the fact that because gaming is quote unquote a disposable industry, there's going to be so much churn that players are going to be coming in and out of these ecosystems. And the advantage that a lot of Web3 players will have, those that are the largest believers, the diamond hands, is that they're going to be able to cycle through all these players and be able to pick and choose their timings for buying certain, items, whether it's the Godslayer and Lost Relics, whether it's a Mystic Axie, whether it's, being one of the very first ones in a brand new project that's coming out by owning their NFT or owning their token, So that's how I would necessarily categorize them into those two sections. Now, I do think if you are a player in the space, I do think that you're going to need to start, and you're going to be staying, not just playing one game, getting your money, getting out. If you're going to continuously be operating in Web3 gaming, whether you're a content creator or DAO or a developer, I do think you're going to need to spend more time and more research in terms of how you enter and exit these economies. They need to be built into your plans as a player. And as developers over the next few years, we're going to start to see, I think, structured and managed exits for players. So developers creating ways to allow players to exit that is in a slow, manageable, feature. One of the things that pops in my mind when we think about this is one of the features that Lost Relics has implemented, which is that in order to withdraw your crypto from the game that you've earned or that you found along the way, you must first have had that crypto cycle through the market once. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, Lost Relics has Shadow Stones, which is a pretty much is Engine, the cryptocurrency. So you're playing, you're running through the dungeons, you find these Shadow Stones. Let's say you find 50 Shadow Stones. In order to withdraw them from the game, you have to have spent them and then sold whatever item you had. This is the cycle, right? So it cycles through the economy, which means that a player that wants to exit can exit by withdrawing their funds. However, at that same time, there was also a separate player who was willing to make a purchase to stay within the ecosystem. So this helps retain some of that value inside the economy. And I expect we're going to see different formats of that and new features be played out to allow for these managed exits. You know, for brand new projects, this could look like something where you buy the NFT, but you're not allowed to actually sell it for 2 years for the initial launch of gaming items or whatnot. So, you know, it can vary quite a bit. Other than that, you know, we've talked about, you know, the idea between playable and investable games. We've talked about, you know, the importance of you as a player understanding your entrance and exits, which means you're going to be needing to hold a certain percentage of your quote unquote gaming value in liquidable tokens, right? So for most people, this is going to be ETH. You know, maybe depending on how Solana rebounds, depending on how these other gaming blockchains rebound, you know, they may be the currency to hold. But right now it's Ethereum. So for example, right now I'm contemplating buying different decks in Gods Unchained. And the way I tend to look at it is, hey, if I'm going to put $100 into Gods Unchained, into a deck, then I'm also going to want to put $100 into Ethereum, right? Not just, so this would mean that my initial purchase would be $200 worth of Ethereum, use 100 of it to go ahead and buy my deck, keep 100 of Ethereum, and this way I'm always liquid. I always have liquid funds to be able to move in and out if something changes, or if there's a new game that I haven't been paying attention to over the past few days or months and something pops off, then we can be able to move or still have some value to play with and not have to rely on the illiquid markets of these NFTs inside these economies, because they're always going to be less liquid than Ethereum or any of the major platform tokens. One of the predictions, you know, maybe not predictions yet, but one of the items that I think we're going to be watching very closely in 2023 is going to be how game developers decide to provide utility or evolve their fungible tokens inside their games. So games that are launching, like, you know, with Axie with SLP, Gods Unchained with Gods, you know, these other games that have their own in-game cryptocurrency, you know, Million on Mars, for example. If we're going to want to see how these play out. Now, I have a feeling that developers are going to continue to evolve the system. They're going to continue to see where that value is added and where players derive that value from. We're gonna see one of these games will start to make an inroads, and then you'll see a bunch of other games copy it as well. It's all part of the growing process. It's all part of learning. So that's going to be one thing I'm going to be keeping an eye on. The other thing's going to be out is probably the 3 biggest players of 2023 that I'll be watching the closest is going to be, let's say 4. I'll go 4 or 5. So in no particular order, Polygon for gaming. Polygon, I would say right now, is probably the leader in terms of a platform and tools, just because they're such a large company with so many partnerships and are trying to expand on so many different layer 2 solutions that they're pretty much building, you know, depending on which one of these succeed for them to be able to proceed forward. So Polygon's going to be one I'm watching. IMX and Loopring, GameStop partnership, still not very clear on what's going to happen there. Maybe GameStop's out of it, but I have been pretty impressed with the tools and features that I've been seeing with IMX. They're still not there yet, okay? There's still a lot more talk than there is actual utility, but the talk is, you know, pretty convincing to me. And when I start to see things, you know, I've started diving into the, you know, IMX a little more closely with Gods. Because of that, I think that they have a good shot at growing some more in 2023, and I would probably say they're my number 2 right now. Number 3 is probably going to have to be Animoca Brands. You know, the success that they've had with their acquisitions of, you know, the Bored Apes, with all of their investments into Sandbox and a bunch of other platforms, and with their funds that they've raised to continue to invest, I feel like they have the most conviction out of any crypto gaming investor, and they, I think, are going to be some of the ones that are paving the way here. If not from a financial aspect, probably from a theoretical or thought-provoking, thought-leading perspective. other than those two, those I would say are the big ones. Those three are probably the big ones. The next one or two probably would have to be, let's see, Oasis that is building to serve Eastern gaming, the development of crypto gaming in the East is going to be fascinating to watch because of the fact that gaming culture in the East is much different than the West. They're much more willing to accept some of the things that we've been getting a bit of fight back on. You know, this whole idea of pay to win or paying for power, or just the fact that NFTs exist in games. Those cultures are a lot more likely to accept, and because of that, going to likely be leading the way. So I'm watching things like Mir4 and WeMix. I'm watching the Oasis blockchain over there. I'm watching Eastern developers specifically to see how they manage it. Okay. Another big one here to pay attention to is going to be Apple and Google and Epic. Okay, I'm going to roll them all into one. These are the three big leaders right now in the AAA gaming space. And I say AAA gaming with respect to Apple and Google because they're the distribution channels, just like Epic is. You know, we've had Microsoft, at least Mojang Studios, come out against NFTs. We've had, you know, GTA do the same, and this is going to continue. Okay, there's going to be people are going to be drawing the line and making a choice between where they want to stand. A lot of them are going to simply doing this because from their perspective it's too early to take the risk, and that is the quote-unquote first mover advantage that some of these other platforms like Epic have. And when it comes to Google and Apple, you know, this whole fighting, you know, this whole idea about Apple obviously gatekeeping and wanting to make sure that they get their 30% cut, I think is legitimate. I think they have every right to do so because it is their platform, and developers, rightfully so, there will be a handful in Web3 gaming that will say, you know what, paying the 30% fee is worth it to be in so many different people's hands. To be able to be on that iOS network where anyone can download the game anywhere around the world is just too valuable of a perspective to pass up. You know, little players like Ultra that are still going to be developing their own thing. Other developers will be trying to come up with their own solutions to get around this. Who knows? Maybe at the end of the day, the one that's going to win is going to be the developers that all choose to just stay either in browser or through downloadable clients on their websites. Maybe that will be the way that proceeds. But seeing what happens with these three, honestly, my perspective will be the big adoption phase. Once one of these three cracks it, in terms of being able to get Web3 games out into players' hands, that's going to be a huge turning point. Don't think that's going to be in 2023, but I do think we might get some really big information during the year that will help guide us and project a little clearer what the future will hold there. One last thing of importance I would say would be a lot of people in every single game right now are asking the question about like, hey, prices are going down, but like if we get to mass adoption, what will that mean for our prices of our cards or our tokens or of our NFTs, of our whatever, gaming assets? Well, I think the thing you need to keep in mind, it's all circular, right? It's all a cycle. The whole cycle is going to play out all over again, okay? So the way that you had to go through, if you've been in the space for a long time, you had to learn about how to store your crypto. You had to learn about wallets. You had to learn about access. You had to learn about what an NFT is versus an FT. You had to learn about all these different things that are like the quote-unquote barriers of entry. Some of them will be relaxed and made easier for future players, but there's still going to be a lot that people have to learn. Okay, so we're going to go through the whole cycle again, right? So if you experienced a bull run, no matter in what game you were in, remember the conversations that people were having. Remember the speculation people were having. That's all going to play out, but with the new people that are coming in, there's likely to be significantly more of them than there are the OG crypto players. That being the case, the mentality that new class brings into the system, that's going to shape the bull market. So remember that we're going to be following the same path, but with new ideas and new theories from those that are joining the space. Just keep that in mind.